Hey everybody, welcome to FND Pod. This is episode 82, brought to you by our guest, our very special guest, Danny. How do you? What's your media handle?
So my media handle is Daniel Backer, but to my friends, and I consider you two of those, you can call me Danny.
Okay, we have Danny Backer.
Danny, so good to see you, dude. Thank you for joining us on FND Pod.
Yeah, I'm honored to be here. I am a fan. I'm an organic fan, and I frequently comment on your TikTok clips of the podcast. So
cut it out.
It's a little surreal to actually be on this side of the mic. You know what I mean?
Be sure to leave a comment later talking about how good you look right now.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Vin.
So we're talking about one battle after another. That's our little anchor for the episode. And as you know, or if you didn't know, you should know. One battle after another was based on a Thomas Pynchon book called Vineland, and Danny is a very well-read man. You've read multiple Pynchon books. You did mention you didn't read that specific one, but you're I would go so far as to say you're a scholar on the subject.
Wow.
Danny's also even read, get this, Aaron, he's read Infinite Jest, and not a lot of people have that accolade under their belt.
That book has a lot of pages.
Yeah, a lot of words.
It does, yes.
So Danny's is also
can read it one day.
I do want to. It's on my long list of books that I've added to my to read and have not started yet.
And Danny is himself an author. He has written one book already, and you're working on your second, right? Or no?
I've got two that are out. One that I kind of distanced myself from, but I'll, if you're a super fan of number 2, I send you number 1. And then number 3 is on the way, called The Kingdom of Liminal Space.
Okay. I knew you were working on Liminal Space. I didn't know if that's exciting. What stage are you at on that one?
So I am in draft like 4 or 5, and it is something where I am 99% done, and I come up with one new idea, and then now I'm 50% done. And it just, I'm sure you all know from writing screenplays and stuff that one thing can add a whole lot of time to it. Essentially, though, the story is conceptualized. It just needs to occur on the paper now. That's about where I am. So we're looking at like spring or summer release.
That's amazing.
Okay, nice.
I think we could probably have a whole other episode where we dive into just writing tips and tricks and, like your experience, because a lot of people listening, either are creative or want to be creative. And so, hearing from somebody who writes as much as you do is like always a treat. I know even from somebody like myself, who I consider myself a writer, but like you still get stuck in those same traps. And so like, it's always refreshing to talk to other people about their methods and what they do. So.
Well, likewise, and this is for the folks at home. Aaron and Vinny both actually gave me notes on Lionel Lancet and the Right Vibe, my most recent book. So it literally could not have come out. It would have halted the presses. So both of them helped me make it happen. So we appreciate it a lot. Yeah,
that was an absolute joy. I have fun reading on my bookshelf right here. Actually, I'll showcase it right here.
Very nice. Thank you.
And
and I have
Danny,
the one.
Actually,
I believe I have the one you wish to distance yourself from.
Oh! Hide my name on the top. No, I'm still very proud of it. I think every artist, their first release, there's always like, let's just see if we can actually do this thing.
Totally.
But I've gotten good compliments on it too, so I probably should just own it.
Most people don't even get that far, so you should be proud of yourself.
I appreciate
even
it.
Even if you think your first book's a steaming pile of trash.
Well, okay, I didn't say that. So.
Yeah, that was your words, man. Danny, first off, I want to shout out your work and like where people can find it, because I highly suggest Lionel Lancet and the Right Vibe. This is just such a fun read. And where can they find it if they want to check it out?
So all of my handles on like YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram are Daniel Backer Author. But then if you want to go straight to the book, you can just Google that name, and you can either buy it from lulu.com or Amazon.
Awesome. Mm-hmm. Awesome. We'll have some links on the episode so people can go right to it.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Danny, what did you think of One Battle After Another?
I loved it, and I knew I was going to love it. But with every new PTA movie, I find that he reinvents himself. And so knowing it was a Pynchon adaptation actually kind of gave me false expectations. And it was a lot different than I expected, but in a really favorable way.
Because what'd you think of Inherent Vice?
Hated it when I first saw it, very disappointed, and then it has since become one of my favorite movies.
Oh, wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
What a roller coaster.
I know, right? Yeah, because I love Joanna Newsom. I love almost every actor in that movie. I love Paul Thomas Anderson, and I love Pynchon. And so I went in, I think, with maybe too high expectations, and then left a little bit like, oh, because Pynchon is very trippy and very zany, and Inherent Vice almost seemed kind of boring and understated, at least on my first watch. So I guess was still intrigued enough to go back and watch it again. And upon piecing it back together, I was like, oh, this is actually a very excellent movie. So like my biggest criticism now is that I just could not absorb it in one viewing.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Well, that's kind of how I feel about this one. And Vinny and I like to be timely with these. And so like when we see something, then we kind of immediately jump to the podcast. But after seeing One Battle, I just saw it on Monday night. And I kept thinking like, man, I wish I had time to see this like 2 more times before even talking about it. It just feels like wrong. It's like there's so much to digest. And how can I even formulate an opinion on it?
I haven't read a
so
single piece of IMDb trivia on this film, so I'm coming in very
what the heck
raw.
The deepest form of research.
Whoa.
I know it's pretty bad. Normally,
okay,
I'm better.
Before we get any farther, I did want to say, so we spoke before we started recording that you read a lot of Pynchon, but you have not read Vineland yet.
That's right. Yes.
And from my reading or from my brief research, I've understood that Paul Thomas Anderson was very hesitant to try to adapt Vineland because I'm told that it's just a very complicated, novel to adapt into a screenplay. And throughout the years, he has adapted it into a series of short stories, which then became One Battle, with the center plot of a father-daughter relationship kind of being like the through point of all of those. That's from what I understand. But as somebody who hasn't also read Vineland, I can't, speak to, how similar it is. To
Aaron can't film. Read also.
I also cannot.
He's. We said we would never say that, but I just had to.
We struggle.
Very sorry to hear. Yeah. It is interesting because I did a Pynchon meetup last night for Pynchon's new book, Shadow Ticket, and somebody whose favorite book is Vineland, not even just favorite Pynchon, mentioned that maybe 15% similarity between the book and the adaptation. Okay. So the premise is very similar, a lot of the big themes, but then if I understand correctly, it is fairly different outside of little Easter eggs for Pynchon fans.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Did he do something similar, PTA that is, did he do something similar with Oil in his adaptation to There Will Be Blood, I heard?
Yes. Yeah, loose adaptation there. And then also The Master has a lot of Pynchon in it as well. I did a YouTube video on that actually, kind of tracking all of the connections between a novel called V, which is Pynchon's first novel, and The Master. And so
it's an excellent video for anyone wishing to learn more about, just delve more into either subject matter.
Yeah, because that one's kind of interesting because I did set out just to track the connections, but then it ends up just being a big deep dive into V, which is kind of a difficult book. So I think it could be a good access for some people that want to get into Pynchon because, like, he's somebody you don't want to just dive into. Like, using the Reddit forums or like a companion can be very helpful with his stuff.
Can I ask?
Who was the first person to read Pynchon? And they go, they didn't have a guide. The first person to read it just had to figure it out.
It was just there. It was just, what
do
I make of all this?
To speak out of the other side of my mouth, when I first read his stuff, I didn't use any resources, but I think what's kind of nice is that his stuff is about how knowledge is not fully graspable. And so especially on a first read, if you just let it wash over you and see what scenes and details stick out to you, like you literally cannot understand it on a first read, full stop, like almost any of his books. And that's kind of the point. That, like, just like in One Battle After Another, a lot of his protagonists are these kind of hapless, paranoid, often stoner characters. And so, like, if you don't get what's going on, like, that's kind of the point.
Interesting. So would you attribute it kind of like poetry almost, where it's very much a feeling, but in novel form, where there is a through line, there is a story there, but it's not something that, is as easy to grasp and, That's interesting. Okay.
100%. Yeah, because it's poetry and like it's his narrative voice that I also think makes it very difficult to adapt. And so I think that's why Joanna Newsom ended up being the narrator in Inherent Vice, is that PTA wanted to get some of that prose in there, and then the narrator ended up just being the most elegant way to do that for the film medium. But then on top of that, not only does it just evoke a feeling, there's a very specific feeling, and he's going for paranoia. And so it is one of those things like you don't really have to know what it is, but it's looming, whatever it is, that sense of potential meaning without actually figuring out what fills in that blank. So.
Yeah, that's accurate. I felt a lot of paranoia just watching one battle.
Yes.
Very much enjoyed it, but also I felt...
Well, you were talking about Inherent Vice has that feeling in it. Or are you talking about one battle?
All of his work.
Everything.
Like you were saying.
Yeah.
Because he does different time periods and different themes come up, but it's like there is a pretty clear through line. And so once you kind of crack what he's trying to do in any one book, the rest of the books open up a lot. Because it's always like one person in way over their head. It's like the Big Lebowski, almost every single one. So.
When did he die?
Pynchon's still alive.
He's still alive, yeah.
What? Why did I think this dude was dead?
Last I saw, I think he's like 88.
Yeah.
He got Danny has his new book. That's what he was
because I was going to ask if that was some sort of like posthumous release, like I don't know, what's his name? How like Tupac Shakur had a bunch of albums come out after he died.
I thought banking on that, and we were talking about this last night at the meetup that there was a speculated like 1,000-page Civil War novel that there's zero evidence of, but people have speculated because he's covered a lot of other time periods in American history except for that. And then he did just donate his manuscripts and a lot of his notes to, I think, the Huntington Library in California, which is kind of like an end-of-life sort of thing to do for an author.
Interesting.
Didn't know that.
That has got to be exciting to be an artist where you have so much stuff that even when you pass, it's just going to keep rolling out. Like it's almost, I don't know, not that you would really ever plan it that way, but it is really interesting because it just keeps you alive, in the memories and minds of any of your fans, and you just keep creating.
We're all chasing is that immortality.
Yeah.
Who needs a shake from Brian Johnston or whatever the hell his name is, the man who's trying to keep
is trying to cheat death by
just write
from his son.
Yes. Who needs to inject blood from your son? Write a book and leave it on a shelf in the library, and you'll live forever.
It's more wholesome.
But think of how many more books you could write if you never die.
That's a good point.
I guess so.
Did you ever think of that, Vinny?
No, I didn't. So I stand corrected.
There you go.
Okay, so you talked about some of the commonalities between his work. He definitely, this One Battle After Another, for anybody who doesn't know, follows. I actually have the summary on Wikipedia is pretty bad. They have a long plot here, but
dude, use the IMDb one. What are you doing?
Essentially,
I got it right. When their evil enemy resurfaces after 16 years. That's a weird way to. When their evil enemy resurfaces after 16 years, a group of ex-revolutionaries reunite to rescue the daughter of one of their own.
Yeah, that's
what it's about.
Better than what I have. So Leonardo DiCaprio plays Ghetto Pat Calhoun, whose wife and baby mama. Well, spoilers here. We'll be diving into details of the film that are not very evident from the trailer. Perfidia Beverly Hills are the far left revolutionaries, and they go up against the incredible. I cannot wait to get to talk about Sean Penn in this, because it's probably one of my favorite things about this movie. They go up against Stephen J. Lockjaw, who develops a sexual fascination with Perfidia. And then, as I said, spoilers, you come to learn that Perfidia
he loves black girls. I love him.
Have a baby.
That scene at the grocery store.
Yeah.
They have a baby, and then that baby grows up to be Willa, who is in hiding with her father, Bob, now, who is Leo under hidden cover. And then where they're living gets outed to Lockjaw, and then kind of a chase ensues to take them out. I don't even know where to start with the film.
What's your favorite scene? Quick, most memorable scene.
I feel like a lot of people agree on this, but just the wavy road during the car chase at the end. I remember like squinting at the screen being like, how did he think to do that? Because it's so simple, but you've like never seen it quite like that before too.
You're right.
That's what immediately comes to mind. I have a couple other, but yeah, what about
the
you guys?
car chase was excellent.
The car chase,
in particular, if I could like hone in on one shot, there's one shot where I don't know how they did it, but my best guess is it was a drone or something where it's like they're tracking the car and the car comes out of frame, and then the camera booms up a huge hill. Might have just been driving, but it just feels like it's skyrocketing upwards, and then the follow car comes into frame like perfectly afterwards. It was just so well done. I don't know. Just
driving scene could have lost 2 minutes.
Get out of here. You could lose.
No, dude.
Minutes.
No, it was at a certain point. I'm like, and I'm not even trying to just be like, I got a hot take. At a certain point, I was like, okay, we get it. I'm getting a little.
It wasn't even that long.
Well, it could have lost a minute. I'll go with a minute.
I'm about to cross my arms.
All right, well,
lost 1 minute.
Well, my favorite scene, other than I think the chase is quite high up there. Anything with Sean Penn.
When they're the whole sequence when Leonardo DiCaprio is trying to charge his phone is one of those, just everything is so like the pacing.
He keeps moving him to other rooms.
Right, yeah, the pacing of the editing there and the constant like like Leo's just locked onto this one task he's trying to do, and how that sequence sort of culminates with him jumping from rooftop to rooftop with the skateboarders, and the way they're like spreading
the air, like, oh my god,
it was one of those things where it was a perfect blending of, well, this is serious, but it's also like really goofy, and it didn't take me out of it. Like it was such a silly thing, but it just felt like it made sense.
I mean, the film had, and tell me if this is Pynchon or this is PTA, Danny, but like the film had several things like that. Like all the characters' nicknames for the revolutionaries, like Jungle Pussy, you've got the
Christmas
white nationalists who are the Christmas adventurers. Where is that pulled from, you think?
That is straight up Pynchon. And I know that PTA has other influences too, but yeah, Pynchon is such an odd mix of very silly and lowbrow and then crazy highbrow philosophical academic, and often in like a whiplash way. So, I mean, yeah, it could have been cobbled together from something else, but it's like, that's straight Pynchon. Almost anything that you read of his. Yeah.
Do you know like who some of Pynchon's favorite authors are?
I know that he gets like Gravity's Rainbow gets compared to Ulysses a lot, to the point that it's not like a coincidence. It was like a Ulysses that was written later, with more contemporary imagery and stuff. And I believe he liked Nabokov. And don't quote me, I'm pretty sure he actually took writing classes from Nabokov. So those are two. And then he was really...
Aaron, you don't even know who that is. And neither do I.
I'm saying...
I made it up. He doesn't exist.
No, I don't know who it is, but I'm saying if it was his favorite author and he took writing classes from him, that was my reaction.
Yeah, and now that I'm talking it out too, that he said, I guess from Nabokov, he learned how to orient a story around a central metaphor. And so that was like the specific thing that he took. And that's very common in Pynchon, that there's like, if anything, some people criticize him for being like too idea driven and not very human. I would push back on that. But like, I think that does kind of capture that like everything has an interpretation if you want to look into it.
Mm.
Yeah.
What you were saying before, where it's like the blend of lowbrow and highbrow, or like absolute absurdity mixed with, I feel like there is a stranger than fiction element to that. There is like a, okay, real life is absurd, and even the times we're living in, sometimes like whether it's, oh, the president tweeted this, or, or you just hear a news story and you're just like, this seems like made up. This seems like somebody cut like a bunch of random words out of a newspaper and put them together, and so do you think there's any of that there where, the just absurdities of real life, are often true?
Most definitely. Yeah. Some stuff, it's always like, if somebody had written that, you'd have been like, no, that's too on the nose. But then something will happen like that, and you're just, there's no other way to approach it. But then at the same time, he was very influenced by Pulp Fiction. not the film, but just like pulpy genre novels, and then also like television. And so some of his stuff and his reputation has this very academic reputation. But if you dig into it and kind of get used to his unconventional language, you see it as very silly and very like slapstick. A lot of Pynchon's stories. Yeah.
I'll tell you one of the absurdities about the film is Leonardo DiCaprio yelling "Viva la Revolucion" after he attended Jeff Bezos' wedding.
Wait, what?
He was a guest at Jeff Bezos' wedding, and he's just yeah, and he was just
in the movie?
Vinny can't separate the actor from the performance.
Oh my god, I'm slow on the uptake. I like have no idea what you're talking about. Sorry. Yeah.
It's just funny.
Vinny thinks that a character's motivations have to map onto their real life, and so for some reason,
you down, Vinny. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. No, it's just it's funny though to see like anytime like well-paid actors are playing Revolution. It's just fun. I don't know. It's funny. There's an irony to it that I don't think I shouldn't be allowed to point out. It's an absurd. That's an absurd thing, is it not?
It is, yeah. Because I know he's big into environmentalism as well, right? Leonardo DiCaprio?
Yeah.
So, like, I wonder if it is a guilt. And I think they're probably smart enough to know that there is this kind of irony to that. And their private jets and whatnot. But
for a $20 million paycheck, who gives a shit? Who gives a
everybody's
shit?
Got their hypocrisies, right? You know, like things that you hold true or your values. And, you know, like you also... go against them, you know, whether
I retroactively boycott the film. I won't.
Yeah.
Now that I've seen it, I wish
boy, Danny, Vinny, we're amongst just a perfect being who is no faults. Yeah. He's just perfect.
Look, I get it. I could point it out.
No, you're not wrong. I think that but it never took me out of it.
No, he's such a good actor that I just stopped caring about 5 minutes in. And I'm not walking around all day with like a chip on my shoulder like that, where I'm like, I get it.
You'd be hard pressed to find a leading actor anyways that you wouldn't feel that way about. I mean, any leading actor I could have
I could have done it.
Oh yeah. Ego is not a fault of yours at all.
Well, I don't know, though. I actually think that is kind of a layer of his character in the film, though, is that at the end, this isn't really a spoiler, even though it is toward the end. It's like there's a protest in Oakland and he doesn't go because it's 3 hours away. You know, that like he kind of gave up a lot of that. And like all of the diehards seemed to be like much more intense than him. And he was, you know, kind of half in, half out, couldn't remember the code words. Like he kind of had the spirit, but then he like retired, you know?
Yeah.
Well, he had to because he was his daughter. He had to care about his daughter. He had a whole other motivating factor in life.
That's true, but I see a little bit more in some of his character actions of him like army crawling across the floor. He's kind of like playing revolutionary, you know. Like I think Perfidio was the real deal, and then I think Leo, you know, maybe was a little.
He just was in love with her.
Yeah.
He was more like, I got this cool girlfriend I got to keep up.
I think so. Yeah, because. I think, and I've seen that in other Pynchon stuff too, because people are always like, oh yeah, Pynchon's hard left. And I almost push back on it a little bit because he does talk about like the failings and hypocrisies of some activists and like the way that the counterculture has sold out. Like that's a big element of the Crying of Lot 49 that he's definitely very critical of systems. Like he's by no means a right winger, but it doesn't really seem like he's portraying the revolutionaries as these like good, pure people with the best intentions. You know, a lot of them are very flawed, and he kind of talks about like the failures a lot of times too. So,
well, I think that in some cases with that, you see a lot of like Perfidia included, but like you see a lot of the revolutionaries in the film, like they're kind of ego driven, you know, like they see themselves as badasses. Even when I forget her name, but the other woman, when they're robbing the bank and she's like standing up across the bank, you know, like kind of like talking like a badass about, oh, you're funding my arsenal or whatever. Like she, you know, they have this like kind of, you know, ego about them, this bravado that's, you know, they're like supercharged by, cause, and so, yeah, it's interesting, but I wanted to get back to what you were talking about with Leo and kind of like this, I don't know, I want to call it cosplaying revolutionary, but there is like that moment, there's those moments where like he snaps into it after he's been out of it for so long, which are really funny to me when, you know, especially Benicio del Toro's character, Sergio kind of helps him. There's that moment where he hands him the gun right before Leo like escapes out of the roof, and he kind of snaps into it and he's like, yes, sensei, yes. And he's like, Viva, like that's when he does the Viva la Revolution. But it's like up until that, he's like so panicked and worried, and he needs that like reset, that reframing of his mind to be like, oh, I can do this. I did this before. But it's like he's psyching himself into it because he's lost it, like, oh, wait, there's something deep in me that I know this feels right. But like he needed that pep talk to get him into it.
I think that's it. Yeah, because I think his intentions are very pure. And then I've heard other people comment on this too, is that like his most revolutionary act is just raising a daughter. That like he was kind of into the fanfare of or like the theatricality of being a revolutionary. And there's actually a line at the beginning that Perfidia tells him with the bombs or those flares to put on a show. Right. And so that is kind of this like image based way of being this revolutionary. And so I don't think it's pure hypocrisy of him like, oh, he was a total faker the whole time. But like his revolutionary act was actually to just live the domestic life,
That's a great point. I didn't think about it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. But and then also in doing that with his background, having done what he did, becoming like this super overprotective for good reason as well. They were in hiding. But then when you learn just how under lock and key he kept Willa, like all her other friends had a phone, and, it was only because she sneakily, like had one on the side, which unbeknownst to Leo's character, like he wouldn't have allowed her to have one. That's how off the grid he wanted to keep them, because he knew it would, that was the only way to keep her safe. And maybe also that fear of knowing how Perfidia was, that was the end of their relationship because of how diehard she was. And maybe there was a worry, there's a couple lines I forget in the film that talk about like, oh, Perfidia, your mother had that like that fire inside of her, and I see it in you. I'm botching the line, but maybe, Leo's character felt that as well. Like he's almost worried, like I'm going to turn you on to, I'm going to, that one spark and it's going to set you off and like I won't see you anymore.
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah. Which is interesting because then, as we've said, it turns out that he's actually not like the blood father of.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask, do you think it's suggested I don't know if it was ever suggested that he knows that she might not be his?
I don't recall. I don't think he ever does, but at least subtextually at the very end, when he's supposed to identify himself, he does say, I think very emphatically, I'm your dad. And thus, at least I'm pretty sure up until that point in the film, she was only ever calling him Bob. And so it does seem to be at least like for the audience, we're seeing this shift that it's like, no, I am the dad, genetics aside, but I don't know if his character learns it or not. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. They don't really ever clear up why even... Like they don't. Does he ever learn that Perfidia had a relationship with Lockjaw?
I don't know. I don't think it's ever suggested that he knows.
It's like only hinted at in the grocery store scene. That like I don't think he puts it together that would be his daughter's actual.
Oh right,
father,
because he sees him in line, and what does he say to him? Oh, what was the line?
He says like, oh, her name is Charlene. Right, and then he's like, "That's a black girl's name, right?"
Yeah,
yeah. And then I forget the specifics as well, but he just says something that would send shivers down your spine if a stranger said that to you in public.
Yeah, because the look on his face afterwards is like this deer in headlights, like pure panic mode.
Yeah.
Is that what he goes? He goes, "I love black girls.
Yeah,
I love them."
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a thought on a scene. I didn't want to stop if there was more on this you guys were going to mention.
Go ahead.
No, please. Yeah.
Okay, when the Native American tracker, what's his name? Do you guys remember his name in the film?
I might be able to find it here.
I don't recall.
When he brings Willa to the dudes who are assumingly going to throw her body in the lake, and he's watching them, and he's watching them get ready, and they cut back to him, and it's like, oh, he's gonna do something. Did you guys feel like his sudden change of heart was a little like undeserved? Like he knew what he was doing. He he knew what he was doing on behalf of Sean Penn's character, and then he suddenly is just like, you know what? He called me a wagon burner. I'm going to kill him. Is that what it was?
To me, my read of it was this guy is a Native American, like clearly working with some like ultra right nationalists, like white nationalists, like militants, and there was two things that he said. One in the car with Willa, where he says, like, are people going to miss you, or are people going to come looking for you?
Yes, I do remember that. Yeah.
He says that, and to me, that sets his mindset is very clear. Like already in the previous scene with Sean Penn with Lockjaw, he says, he's clearly uncomfortable. Like, oh, I don't do kids, like this is off limits for me. So he's already set his boundaries. And then as he's taking her to the next spot, I think that signals to me that he is like already uncomfortable and his wheels are turning about like, what did I get myself into? Then, I bring up the Native American thing because, I don't know, like being in that place, working with those people, being ridiculed, and then knowing that you just dropped off somebody, like a black person to possibly just get executed. I think that's to me what I read is like everything that was going on in their mind.
Yeah, I figured I kind of like that on the face. That's the case is like, oh yeah, I'm not, these people are not on my side, but they also, like many characters in the film, everyone's got like moral gray areas where like, hey, I'm getting paid for this. Like I'll do it, So
yeah, I have heard other people bring that up. It didn't take me out of it when I saw it, but if I can accuse PTA, it might just be like a plot convenience thing.
I kind of felt he's like, well, I guess he just, he just does this then.
Well, you could argue that, if anything, that he tried to show reasoning with the character, but he just needed more time, a little more development with that character, which maybe again, it's like this film is 2 hours and 40 minutes. It's like
we need a 10-minute scene
in the editing room. You're like, okay, how important is this, or how much is the audience kind of just able to infer, just based on what we have in here already?
Yeah.
Well, that does make me think, because I didn't put this together until you guys were discussing it, is that like if he does not execute kids, then it's probably likely that he's not transporting kids, period, kidnapping them or anything like that. Mm-hmm. And so just the fact that she is like young, I think probably was like an unfamiliar day in his life that could have, that would have been different from any other person that he would be presumably executing,
You could also argue that him taking her on was not necessarily him agreeing to like, okay, well, I'm going to do this, but him trying to buy himself more time because he knew if I'm going to leave her with Lockjaw and he's asking this, well, she's going to die with him anyways. So it's kind of like him taking the job on as like, well, I'm going to buy you some more time before I figure out what
to do with the situation.
I want to do this or not.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, you know what? It's good. It was well written. It was changed my mind.
I think you're right to call it out though. I've seen other people on TikTok comment on it that it did seem a little convenient.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I just wanted to give a brief shout out for the score.
Oh my God! Yeah.
Just because, God damn, like that just worked for me so well. I think there was a moment in the movie. I'd have to rewatch it because I was just.
I never remember the music after I watch a film.
Dude, I don't know, but it was like an hour in, and I felt like it was just almost a constant soundtrack behind the whole thing, and it just kept shifting and changing, as the scenes moved along. But it just kept this momentum up for the first act of the film that I just worked for me so well. And again, like, the kind of like the theme that they have, like you said, what is it, like the piano or something, Danny?
Yeah, I wouldn't know how to describe it. It feels very jazzy, and like I don't think there might not be any other instruments going on. It's just the one like dunk dunk dunk.
Yeah,
and then like
it's like a plucky kind of, like. And I rewatched the trailer before we recorded, and they have it in the trailer. But I remember thinking like, so rarely I think nowadays do films land on like an iconic sound or music, but that I think they nailed it. I think that I'll hear that. I could hear that in the next 20 years and I can automatically know like, oh man, that's this film.
Oh, do you guys know who the composer is?
No.
Johnny Greenwood, right?
Yeah, I didn't know that not only has been Paul Thomas Anderson's guy, but he was in Radiohead.
Oh,
yeah.
cool.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I had no idea. That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, he did There Will Be Blood at least. But yeah, I think he's done maybe another film.
He's done The Phantom Thread. He did The Master. He did Inherent Vice. He did Licorice
so he's
Pizza.
a frequent collaborator. Yeah.
Yeah, he's done like almost all of his movies.
Yeah, that
Because then
works.
PTA did the music video for them, the like music video film Anima, I think it's called.
Yeah, right. Yes. So that makes sense.
Nice.
I like this PTA Radiohead Haim trio of collaboration.
Yeah.
Yeah, I liked how he had her in this one as one of the revolutionaries. As soon as I saw her
Doing
pop up,
that scene when she gets popped in the side of the head, I did not see that shit coming.
me neither.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
I thought
crazy.
she was going to have a way bigger role than that. I was like, oh, wow. Like, sequence. She's out of there.
Yeah, no, they don't. That also actually begs the question of like, the film never is heavy-handed with, in my opinion, with like the state of affairs and how they relate to today. But I think you'd be naive. Anybody would be naive in saying like, oh, there's no parallels. It's like there's a ton of parallels, but like he doesn't get into it, and that you're never like. It's never political in the film. It's just these things are happening and you just have to assume this is the world in which it exists. Like normally you would see, a convict or a felon or whatever getting executed out the back door of a building is not the way things typically happen, but it just kind of seemed commonplace as they were taking them all out. And then you just have to accept in the movie is like, oh man, yeah, like we're a little farther gone in this America in the film than we are currently. Did you guys think that?
I mean, you're assuming that doesn't already happen. And
I know it happens. My point of view was, it felt to me that while he didn't go heavy handed with the politics in the movie, I took it as like, this is America, like in the near distant future where things are a little more broken down. Institutions are even more broken down than they are. Military has more control. I mean, to be honest, the impression I got was like the military has a lot of control in this film. I mean, they're flying Blackhawks or whatever over to scoop up, think of the operation of even them getting Bob and Willa out in Bakaton or whatever they were. That was a huge military operation.
Right, and the whole thing was that was his motivation was to extract her, but they did it under the guise of we're raiding this chicken factory or whatever, it's chicken nugget plant. Right.
Yes.
I did get that sense actually on the French 75 side too, because I know that there is like Antifa and different activist groups, but like the scale at which they were operating was pretty massive, of them like shutting down power grids and exploding banks and stuff. Like stuff like that happens, but I feel like on a much smaller scale and usually by like a lone wolf. So that did seem like it was this kind of accelerated version of the political state of affairs. Yeah.
Even the fact that they still had, Leo was able to call in, 15 years later, there still was one phone number he could call and there's still protocol set up.
Yeah.
Now that you're mentioning it, that did seem a little like that doesn't, I mean, unless, we're not in Antifa. We're just definitely no Antifa members here.
Anybody listening? We're not. Never got
Unless there is some group that operates that way on U.S. soil. I mean, I'm also, they were based on like the Weather Underground. I don't know how sophisticated those people were, if it was like that or if any of those members are still like, alive. But
no, I agree with Danny in that, like right now it feels like a lot more lone wolf action, but in this, fictional, possibly near distant future that he's setting up is like all too possible that, it's more expanded, more, official.
I am curious if when he started writing it, he knew, just with opening up in a migrant camp, if it just seemed like, oh man, that's very on the nose. And I'm assuming when he wrote this, it wasn't the ICE raids weren't as crazy as they are now. So I was curious about that, how much he had, how much foresight he had, or if it was kind of like, I don't want to call it luck, but like kind of, oh yeah, he just picked the thing.
I do know that a lot of the stuff with Benicio del Toro moving migrants around was actually Benicio del Toro's idea. So that does suggest that it was not in the original script. I don't know about the opening sequence with them in the camps, but apparently he was going to be a much smaller role, and then he just showed up and was like, oh no, they need to be like basically moving migrants around when he's helping out Leo, and that adds such an amazing element to the film that like
that was
not in the script. So
that's actually a great call, because that's a whole other element to it that I kind of spaced on, was that, you know, aside from the revolutionaries planting the bombs and stuff, you had this whole underground operation that were moving migrants like around like crazy. Like they had like a legit operation. They had skateboarders on the streets that were feeding them intel, you know, like it was the connected pieces were all over. I mean, even seemingly, you know, Willa and Bob, she takes karate classes from this guy, but like they didn't set it up like Bob and Sergio, you know, had any connection, you know, via the revolution, you know.
Well, you know what I noticed on my second viewing that I didn't see the first time is that after Bob gets arrested and he's talking to that woman about low blood sugar, she says, you know, bad hombres need to like eat for their low blood sugar, and she's like an activist.
Yeah, she's like feeding him. Yeah,
that completely flew over my head. So I think it is to suggest that it's like, oh, they're everywhere. They'll use their code words and like, you know, they're working in institutions and they're all over the place.
Well, that makes sense.
His name, yeah, because when he says he doesn't know his name, but then she says Bob, right, and then he looks up.
I didn't even catch that. Yeah, I just assumed like she was just the person working at the.
She says Bob, and then he looks up like, wait, why'd you just use my name? You know, because the previous scene he's saying he's like Peter Pan or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and so that gets his attention, and then clearly he locks onto that, and then the nurse lets him out. So it's far spread.
But also that town specifically was where people were being funneled to, so it was sort of everyone was on high alert in that town specifically because that's where. What's his name? The first guy that the dude tracks down. He was like the first stop of like the railroad that would bring people to that town.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
So everyone there was sort of specialized in it.
Yeah.
What did you guys think about the? We haven't really talked about Sean Penn or that the Christmas Adventurers Club. Like that whole thing was pretty great.
Yeah. Let's see. I mean. Let's start with Sean Penn and just, he buffed up. I mean, I don't know.
What was the last role he had?
Regular physique, but like it looked like he had to have gained 20 pounds of muscle for this. Like he was.
Yeah, he looked pretty crazy.
He was
He had a pretty serious vein in his bicep that was just ready to burst.
Yeah.
Any moment.
What was his last film? Animals in War? I don't even know what that. Oh wait, is that out yet?
Well, he was in Licorice Pizza as well.
Oh, was he really?
Yeah,
I haven't seen it.
He takes Alana on a date, and I mean that's like a whole separate conversation. But like, I also think that his cameo is very specific because he's like doing a line reading for an audition when he first shows up. But the way that they shoot it, you don't know if it's like part of Licorice Pizza or part of the scene that they're in. So like. You are led to believe like, oh, this is Sean Penn, not his character. And then they're like, oh, okay, he's like acting in a scene, if that makes sense.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. That's still one that I have to see.
It's a very controversial one. The age gap has been a tough topic. But I think it's an excellent movie. But it, you know, again, that's a podcast for another day.
I've only seen it once and it was forever ago. So,
yeah. Okay. And then, I mean, I'd like to call out all of Sean Penn's mannerisms. He had kind of this constant pouty frown thing going on with his mouth that just worked so well.
And I think that is because he's a man who is in a position that he has to keep a lot of things suppressed.
Yeah.
Just for example,
I was going to say that same exact thing. It's like
he's a military dude. He lives in a very strict regimented life, but he has this whole secret life he has to keep secret. So it just comes out in all these weird little tics.
Did you think that when Willa suggests from his tight shirt at the end that he's gay, and did you think, I mean, to me, the whole thing, his whole closeted, you know, personality was that, yeah, he's into black women and that he's like a sexual deviant or something. But it didn't occur to me until she said that may he's also homosexual. Like, did you guys think that at all? Or did you just think that goes in tandem with, you know, all these other feelings that he's repressing?
I took it more as a laugh line.
Yeah.
But I mean, again, I think it fits with the rest of his character that he is very repressed and has a lot of like sexual impulses that that seep out, and I also seem like very deeply connected to his like political views and his job in a lot of ways, which I could get further into as well, kind of connected to Perfidia, because I have some takes on that as well.
Oh, dude, I'd love to.
Well,
hear
go
more.
ahead. What do you like?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Well, I think that like there's been a lot of commentary, especially in the beginning, about how like sexually charged it is, and that I did not expect at all when I was seeing it. You know, I definitely
Right.
expected the activism and everything, and so I was a little caught off guard with that. But then,
Yeah, they were tongue kissing pretty hard in the back of the car in
Yeah.
one of the opening scenes. I was like, oh, okay.
yeah, and then like you at the first couple instances of that, I was just like, oh yeah, maybe it's just a thing. But then it's like, oh no, that's like kind of the deeper meaning of that whole first sequence. And so it might sound like I'm reading a little far into it, but something that Pynchon does do a lot is talk about how like political perspectives and like actions actually do kind of have like a Freudian sexual root. That it's the term is sublimation. That when you have sexual impulses that you cannot like properly manifest into the world, then they end up getting channeled into these different ways. And so in Gravity's Rainbow in particular, there's a lot of exploration of like how politics and sexual impulses and power and domination from a political perspective are also very kind of in parallel with domination and submission in a sexual perspective.
I didn't even connect it. That's super interesting. I mean, that explains why Perfidia, you know, they're literally planting the bomb at the power grid, and she's like, we
It
need to have
explains-
sex. Like she's like,
Yeah. I'll say it explains the spike in grinder usage when at the RNC at any RNC sort of meetup.
Oh, I heard that. Yeah, for the
Yeah,
I don't want to say his name. You know who I'm talking about.
for CK's memorial.
Yes, that's right.
Well, real quick, I just remembered something. This scene when they do have sex, he's on his back and she goes down while he's on his back, and so she's presumably doing something to his ass. So I think maybe, Aaron, you're right in that like maybe he's not gay, but he's like, you know, he's a man who knows how to derive pleasure from his asshole.
Yeah. I got my immediate thought, not even trying to piece it together. I was like, she just shoved the gun up there.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
what I
No,
thought.
you're
I
right.
thought she was
Yeah.
shoving
I
something
think that's
up
what
there.
we're led to believe, because it
Right.
takes place like below the frame. But
Yeah, and he's
Yeah.
the other way. You know, he's the way where he's going to be receipt. There will be insertion. It suggests insertion.
I think there's all kind. I mean, you don't have to put a label on it, but I think Sean Penn's character, and maybe I wonder if he actually knew. You know, like some of that we discussed on a previous podcast where I think it was Weapons, where Zach Kreger. Have you seen Weapons, Danny?
no, I have not. No.
Oh, okay. Well, anyways, Zach Kreger, the director, gave one of the characters kind of like two backstories and was like, I don't know, I don't want to know which you're choosing, but just choose one of them and, you know, go with
that's
it
cool.
to kind of inform their motivations. And that's the kind of stuff I wonder about. Like, did PTA approach Sean Penn and say, like, you know, this is everything you've got going on? Or did he just kind of blanket it with being like, yo, you got some sexual things going on in your closet you need to work out, and, you know, take that as you will. Sometimes I just wonder how much info is given.
Yeah, because I know in interviews PTA is very cagey, and so I almost feel like he's lying sometimes, where he's just like, yeah, we're not talking about theme, this is just character. But then, like, if you read Pynchon, it's so idea driven and so multiple layers for everything that I can't tell if PTA just doesn't want to spoil the magic, or if he is truly just letting the actors interpret the script. And because I've also heard that, like, on set, what he'll do is he'll just come up and whisper like a single thing into their ear when he's directing them too. So
Like they just
know,
put
it's-
out
it's
Nutter
hard to
Butters
say.
at the craft table. Let's get this through his scene.
right.
Let's get over to the craft.
this isn't working. Yeah.
Do better.
Do you guys know how Pynchon feels about any of PTA's movies?
Well, Danny, you probably know better, but I just read that he is.
My assumption is he likes them.
I think that they've become friends from my brief understanding, but Danny, please fill us in.
Honestly, I don't know much more than you because Pynchon is so private.
I thought the guy was dead.
Yeah. It's semi well known that there's supposed to be a cameo of his in Inherent Vice, but like nobody agrees on even which background actor he's supposed to be. But if I understand, in an interview, PTA said that like he got Pynchon's blessing for the loose adaptation of Vineland, and so he must respect his work because he is
Right.
He's not about wanting to put his face out there for any kind of fame or recognition or anything. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's about as much as I read as well. That that he kind of got the blessing to do it, and that they kind of have a friendship over the course of, obviously, everything that he's adapted and worked on from him. So
Yeah.
that
Which book was Boogie Nights? Which Pynchon book was Boogie Nights based on, Danny?
You know, I am not sure. That's funny you bring that because I was about to say this, that like I think Pynchon bleeds into a lot more PTA films than even the loose adaptations. Like I think Licorice Pizza is extremely postmodern and Pynchonian. And I think that like yeah, he's like truly making it a project of his filmography to try to take some of those ideas, because not just that he's like a fan, but like Pynchon really is a giant of that entire genre, if you can call that, or the entire postmodern movement. Like he innovated a lot of these styles, and what he didn't innovate, he like perfected in a lot of ways. And so I see it all over the stuff, even that is not, nominally connected to Pynchon at all.
Now, Danny, I want to give you a chance to sound real smart, and I'm not trying to be like facetious when I say that, but because you and I have talked at length about this thing. Just the word postmodernism is that could mean a million different things when you mention it. So I would love for you to just sort of like educate Aaron and I in the audience on when you use the term like postmodernism in this context, and as it relates to like, I guess, literature and maybe the broader art world. And Thomas Pynchon's place in it, maybe what came a little bit before and what's been inspired by him since. Just like, can you just talk about it for a little bit?
Yeah. So a lot of times people mistakenly think it's like a belief system or an ideology, and I think it can be that. But
can I just say my understanding of it is it's like an awareness. It's like when art is about art.
Yeah.
Is my most boiled down understanding of like sort of what postmodernism is.
Yes. It is a lot of things as well. So like there will be exceptions to a lot of what I say, because at the end of the day, this is just like academics trying to categorize art, and there's disagreements within that. And so a lot of it is this sense of awareness. It's a sense of wanting to break the form. But then what's interesting is that a lot of the moves that they do, you can find in earlier art movements, but one of the characteristics of postmodernism is like time period. And so a lot of people will say like postmodernism roughly began with either Ulysses or just generally like after the atom bomb, right? Kind of depending on what you're analyzing with it. And then people say it generally ended around 9/11, which isn't to say that nothing before or after that time like got rid of postmodernism at all. But it's like Don Quixote does a lot of meta stuff and intertextuality of like being in dialogue with other texts, but it was written so long before the postmodern era, it's just categorically not postmodern. So I get that it's a little difficult to describe, but I think you're on the money. Yeah, that it's this sense of awareness. For something like One Battle After Another, the evocative names like Lockjaw, that's a big thing from Pynchon, because it's supposed to kind of create this effect that we've inherited a lot of influence from what came before. And so,
well, his name wasn't Lockjaw in the book, but I'm sure there's other examples.
Yeah, I guess when I say that Pynchon is very well known for having very evocative names for his characters. And so Lockjaw, you're right that like he's not in the book, but it's like there's a guy named Genghis Cohen in The Crying of Lot 49 that's added this sense of play, is also considered a characteristic of postmodern art. Which isn't to say that like other art does not play, but there is this kind of that like mix of highbrow and lowbrow, meta, anything like direct addresses to the audience, breaking the fourth wall is a big characteristic there as well. And then from a more academic perspective, it's the breaking down of meta narratives. And I don't have to completely describe what that is, but if you can imagine that the not postmodern perspective is like the world can be known. There's this overarching understanding of history through something like Marxism. The postmodernists are like, that's too neat of a package to put history in, to say that like history is just the working class eventually going to rise up and then defeat capitalism, and we're going to arise into this perfect kind of narrative arc. The postmodernists are like, no, things are way more complicated than that. And so they doubt meta narratives, if that makes sense.
Is that like sort of like an epistemology thing? Like we can't know where knowledge comes from?
Yeah, that there's this sense of doubt. There's this sense of skepticism toward anything, and this like hyper-specific skepticism. So a lot of times they're like really drilling into language, and they're saying like language is an insufficient tool to know things. And so we're kind of doomed from the beginning. But then from an artistic perspective, they actually try to put that into their imagery, if that makes sense. That they're trying to show that like the way that we know things is broken. And so what Pynchon will do with that is he'll he'll feature scientists of like outdated scientific beliefs that like we now know today cannot be known, and they're kind of on equal footing with something like astrology or the occult. That it's like this is just another tool in our toolbox. Science frequently overwrites what was done in the past, and so like whatever we take to be scientifically accurate today could be just as relative. We could throw it out tomorrow. Yeah.
That's super interesting.
Does that help?
Yes.
Yeah. So there,
It helps.
you said a lot, so I don't know where
time.
I don't know
More
where to.
confused and more clear simultaneously.
Would you say that's a postmodern thing, Danny?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Because what's funny is that before people even get a grasp on postmodernism, they try to do postmodernism to the understanding of postmodernism, and it's like we can get there, but like I think that's why I like to really root it in art, because philosophy is dense, and especially postmodern philosophy, no one really agrees on a lot of it. Because they're like, yeah, but if you break language and you write a book about how language is broken, doesn't it? And it's like, well, yeah, I mean, sure. But like, it's really more of like, yeah, like these characters are in a world that cannot be known. Let's start there. And that like they're trying to know it. So like he's got the postmodern detective that's in over their head. We think of The Big Lebowski. We think of Inherent Vice, that they're like, they want to be the clever Sherlock Holmes that's going to wrap it up all at the end. That's not going to happen in this one. But then through these other means, they end up gaining knowledge. And so like in The Crying of Lot 49, it's a housewife who's the detective. And it's not that she's so cunning and clever and sniffs out all the clues, but it's like her ability to perceive pain in the world and see the world through her lens of tears is actually what helps her pick up on these clues that the other people around her like couldn't possibly pick up on. It's this very like alternative form of knowing the world.
Okay. So like sort of a departure from logic and reason, and allowing emotion to be something as as on a pedestal as like the same logic that built the modern world we love so much.
100%. Yeah.
So Danny, postmodernism, you said arguably ended 9/11 ish. What are we in now?
People will say postmodernism while hating the term, which makes sense. New sincerity is kind of considered a more friendly version. Metamodernism is another word that people throw around.
New sincerity?
New sincerity
That's
usually gets
interesting.
mentioned around like David Foster Wallace, because he's using a lot of like Pynchon's imagery and aesthetic, but with a more assertive sense of like, well, maybe we can't know anything, but there are these kind of cliches and truths that we can pass down and still cobble together something useful. Whereas I'm sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
I'd say new sincerity suggests that there's like an ironic or like sarcastic thread through postmodernism.
It can be cynical. Yeah. That it can be there. That can be, and I push back on that in some sense, because like a lot of what I think of deconstructing these forms of knowledge can leave is like the human spirit, the intangibles. But then at its worst, in my opinion, postmodernism can be very like, F you, nothing can be known, so why try? Which is why I say like I don't think it should be a belief system. It's a critical lens. It's a way to organize data in a text, an artwork, a painting, architecture, things like that.
But it's black pilled.
It is kind of black pilled, yeah, because it's so critical of the way that we know things. It doesn't necessarily assert a lot,
and it doesn't offer an answer either, I imagine.
Yeah, a lot of times it doesn't. I think Deleuze is a philosopher who is often considered to be a more optimistic postmodernist, because, and I think this actually helps us understand it more, is that he thinks that something like psychology just makes you a neurotic, worried about your parents back on the couch talking about your mommy and daddy issues. And he's like, no, throw that away. Be a schizophrenic singing in the street. And so like if you get rid of those structures, you can kind of be left with this artistic effusion, that you're just out there, and like you don't need the overarching narrative, right?
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Whereas new sincerity is kind of like, well, actually we kind of do, but we don't have to think it's perfect either. That like we know it's a tool. It's not the absolute truth. It's just something that we use to get.
We know what's a tool.
Anything that we use. Let me give an example, because when we talk in abstract, it's tough. It's like in Infinite Jest, which some people consider like a work of new sincerity, he considers the precepts in Alcoholics Anonymous to be a structure with which you can live your life. Because it's very...
The 12 steps.
The 12 steps, yeah. Because it's like a lot of people who get into addiction have no larger meaning, no larger story for their life. And so it kind of gives you this sense of a higher power. But what makes it kind of meta modern is that they're like, you don't have to believe in the higher power. You just need one. right? And so like, because atheists will end up struggling with Alcoholics Anonymous for that reason, because they're like, no, but I don't believe in God. Whereas like the kind of more meta modern thing is like, yeah, but you kind of need him anyway. Like you don't have to believe, but like you just need something to fill that gap.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
And so if you're super creative, you can fill that in with something else. But that's what I would say.
Monster.
Exactly. Yeah. Like you need structure in your life, and you don't have to think your structure is like real necessarily.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that tracks.
Yeah.
What's your God, Danny?
My God, that's interesting.
What's your high power? You don't got if you don't.
Is that a whole other episode?
No, I could get into it because I have been thinking about this a lot. That if I have not already made myself sound pretentious enough, I think what I am really into right now, because I've gotten very into the occult in the past couple of years, is that like symbolism feels divine to me because it is literally just one thing being more than what it is, right? And so like if you kind of apply that basic principle to everything, whatever appears in front of your face, there's always more to it. There's always like a kind of a spiritual dimension to it. And so that's kind of what I'm into right now, which I get is a little heady and detached as well. But like that's the best thing that I can come up with at this point.
That's kind of I like that approach because it's it allows you, in my mind, like from you describing it, allows you to have a deeper meaning behind everything, even the things that seem like small and non-impactful whatsoever. You could, if you search hard enough or you think hard enough, like there could be some connection there that consciously you're not aware of, but subconsciously is there. So I think that's pretty cool if I described it correctly.
Yeah, 100%. Well, and especially applied to things like people, because I think that when you're super depressed and you feel like there is no larger narrative to yourself, you think you know yourself completely. And so then if you look at yourself through more symbolic terms, you gain a sense of curiosity about yourself. And you're like, oh, well, there's probably more to myself than meets the eye. There's more to other people than meets the eye. And I think depression and being super low kind of flattens everything, where you're like, no, things are simple. What I see is all there is. And so that symbolic perspective kind of allows you to like, no, well, let's add the mystery back into things.
So yeah, there's like an ever pervasive mystery throughout every bit of life.
I think so. Yeah. Yeah. And it's at least a functional principle that makes me a little less depressed, like it's not as much about like, could I prove it, as much as it's like, oh yeah,
it's fun. It's just kind of fun to think that, it's fun to think in this way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. That's,
I don't know if fun's the term, but it just, it's like more interesting.
No, I think
it's fun and useful is that it's like the more I frame things like that, the more I feel a little bit more on the ball and a little bit more curious. And when I'm super low, it's like, oh no, I know everything and it's bad.
Yep.
It's certainty, right?
Yeah.
That frame of mind is really important. Bill Hader, kind of adjacent, not super related, but Bill Hader has talks about anxiety and describes how he deals with like anxiety attacks as like, anxiety is like something that's just he's experiencing right now. Like he isn't his anxiety. It's just something that's, hey, I'm Bill with anxiety right now. It's like as if it's a thing sitting on his shoulder. And I think that like reframing is like super important. I think that, I think it's nice because sometimes, like you said, like your mindset controls so much of your viewpoints and so much of your mood that a little tweak to that can like really go a long way.
And a postmodernist, correct me if I'm wrong, Danny, would say, well, how can you even know you're anxious?
Yeah, that's the one. I think that'd be a more optimistic spin on postmodernism too, because I thought that same thing when Aaron was describing this, is that like you can think of yourself as this essential entity that is anxiety, and then you can dismantle that through postmodern means and be like, no, this is this moment. This is contingent on other things. I'm going to be something else in a few minutes. And so like, not even just as a tool, but like actually in reality, you're like, no, I cannot be essentially anxious, even if I'm experiencing it right now.
Yeah.
Love that.
There's like it reminds me of like another, I don't know if it's like a Buddhist saying, but it's like, I am a mountain. My thoughts are clouds.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They come and go. Yeah. So it's like, and that's that whole idea of attachment that like when you're in any kind of headspace, even a good headspace, you can kind of be like, oh, thank God I'll be this way forever now. Or I don't want to be this way forever now. But it's like, oh yeah, nothing is permanent.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're coming up on an hour now, and this is usually when we wrap things. Don't want to steal too much of your time, but this was like actually got way more fascinating than I anticipated for talking about this movie. But I think it perfectly fits, like, you know, like everything that you're describing with postmodernism and how also it relates to the film and Pynchon.
And this is why when I said the thing about Leo saying "Viva la Revolution," I was right on the money. That was
you were, dude.
Sorry, I'm trying to make that.
You are vindicated.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, that was very good, Danny. Thank
That's
you.
that writer talent.
You know, I wrote it down earlier today, and I was like, I'm going to find a spot to drop it. And
This is what
Vinny would mess it up and then redeem. So
this is what writing 3 books and having read for 10,000 hours gets you.
thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. The pun is the highest form of my intellect, so I'm glad it showed up.
No, you're dude, light years ahead, and I can't wait to dive into your next work when it's ready. And as always, I'm sure I speak for Vinny as well, but happy to give anything a read through. I was honored to do so on Lionel. But I do want to remind everybody now at the tail end of this where they can find your stuff. So if you want to hit them with your tag again, and we'll again put links in the description.
100%. Yeah. So yeah, once again, you'll definitely be hearing from me with the manuscript. And yeah, thank you for having me on. But it's Daniel Backer, author, on pretty much anything. I'm most active on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram. And then Lionel Lancet and the Right Vibe. If you want to go straight to the book, you can either Google that or find it on Lulu or Amazon. Lionel Lancet and the Right Vibe.
Cool. Thank you, Danny, for joining us. It was a pleasure talking with you today.
Yeah, this was a blast. I love doing this.
Awesome, man. Well, we'll find another film, and we'll definitely have you on again. Absolute pleasure talking to you and catching up, man. And yeah, go check out Danny's work. He's phenomenal. And that was it, guys. That's 82 of FND Pod, and we'll see you next week where we have a spooky movie planned, and we'll discuss that. So, everybody, have a great night, and thanks for joining.
Bye-bye.
Bye.